Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight. I'm going to mess around with some of my old CB radios. I have actually quite a decent, I wouldn't quite call it a collection, because a collection is where you have really nice stuff. At least I think the way a collection should be is you have nice stuff well displayed. And I never got around to really getting all my radios together, cleaned up, and on shelves. I've got them all over the place. I have some radios I don't want to part with right now, but I also have just a lot of radios that I've just come into here and there over the years, and I ended up selling the old Tektronix oscilloscope that I featured several videos ago on this channel, and I offered it up for, I think it was 50 bucks on Facebook Marketplace, and that went right away. The gentleman who came down and purchased that saw a couple of radios I had laying around here, and I said, "Oh, you like CB radios?" We got to talking, and turns out he really does like CB. He wants to get into working on them and learning more about fixing them, and he wants to start acquiring more of them. And turns out he's got machinist tools that he's looking to get rid of. So we decided probably the best thing for me to do would be to put together some radios that I'm ready to part with, and take a ride out and look at his collection of tools and see if we can't do some horse trading. So I was planning on going there tomorrow, so I'd like to check some of these radios out, because obviously I'd like to be able to tell him with a straight face whether or not these radios are any, have any life left in them. Something like this radio right here, for instance, I don't even remember where I got this from, but this is an old Cobra 90 LTD. And as small as this is, believe it or not, this is a base radio. It has a big old honking three-prong cord that comes out of the back of it. There is no there's no way to run 12 volts into the back of this, as with some of the some of these radios that are kind of like small bases. Some of them actually have a 12 volt input on the back, so you could take it and put it in a car. This is not one of those. So I've got a couple of meters that I can use. I have one that's got a built-in small low resolution frequency counter and SWR meter and power meter built into it, but I actually prefer this old Portalab that I've had for quite a few years. And the reason why I like this one is because this one, in addition to having a 50 watt watt meter and the SWR meter built into it, there's also a modulation meter, there's a field strength meter, and more importantly, there is a built-in dummy load. Now, that dummy load that's in here, of course, would be for normal legal wattage, which maximum legal wattage on AM for CB radios was 4 watts. So we wouldn't want to put any big power into these. I wouldn't want to run some of the bigger radios I have that have more output into that dummy load. But since I don't have an aerial on the roof of my house, I don't really have any ability to do any actual on-air radio checks. I have this rather little pathetic indoor antenna. This is, I don't even remember who makes this, but I had this from years ago when I used to have an apartment and still wanted to be on the air. So this is what this has got. There's not much to this. I'm down here in the basement. I have no idea if we're going to get any signal at all. But, just for the heck of it, we could try it out. Alright, so the first test I'm going to do is I've just plugged the radio in and we're just going to power it on. Okay, I am not getting a channel readout, but maybe, yeah. See, I've got this switch is flipped down right here, and this is in the PA position. This is for a public address amplifier. you used to be able to plug in a PA speaker, one of those little horn speakers, put it like in the grill of your car, and you could literally use this as an amplifier and get quite a bit of volume out of one of those things. They used to be fun back in the day. If you had it in the grill of your car, you could, you could shout to people on the street. I have no idea why you would want one in a base radio, but if we flip this to CB, there we go. Now it's in the CB mode, so now it has turned the display on. The display does appear to have all of its segments. That's a good sign. We get no sound out of it, but that doesn't mean anything because a lot of these radios, they have to have a microphone plugged into them before you'll get any receive audio, because they have a switch inside the microphone. It's a slide switch with multiple contacts, and it will slide back and forth, and it will change from the receive mode to transmit mode. And some radios you don't have to have a mic plugged in, and the receiver will work perfectly fine. But this might be one of those that doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, I do not have a microphone for this particular radio, and to make matters worse, this is the 5-pin plug that some of the Cobra radios use. I think my Cobra 2000 GTL uses the 5-pin, and this one is probably the only other radio I have, Cobra radio I have, that has a 5-pin plug. I think all the other ones have the more common 4-pin configuration, which is a little easier to deal with as far as figuring out what's what. So I am going to throw this lousy antenna on just for the heck of it. If I short these two pins, get quite a bit more noise out of it. However, I can't get any signals down here in the basement. I even tried moving the antenna over near the door, and I just couldn't get anything, but there was plenty of loud static, and it changed on the different channels, so I have no reason to believe that this isn't receiving. This uses a phase lock loop to generate the frequencies. They're pretty reliable. That being said, what isn't too reliable this evening is my old meter that I was just saying how much I liked. This old meter has bit the dust, so I'm just using it back there as a dummy load, and I've went and grabbed my other meter, this TriStar 250FC. It's got a built-in frequency counter, but it needs a 12-volt supply to make that work. But the SWR meter and the power meter work perfectly fine because they're passive. So I've checked my SWR, and just key this. So we got the transmit light is on, so I know I'm transmitting right there. And the way you set the SWR on this is you pull this knob and adjust it to the set line, push that in, and that gives me my SWR, which I'm reading at about 1.2 to 1. That's just the coax line and the dummy load, so it should be very good. And the jumper coax lines I have here are a little too long, so that's probably why it's as high as it is. And so now if I flip this to power, I've got it in the 10 watt scale, and it's kind of going all over the place. It was a pretty good dead key 6 watts, so this thing may have been peaked by somebody. But it probably could use some, there's probably some capacitors in there that are not doing so well with age. Oops. That's what happens when you accidentally short the receive pin and the transmit pin simultaneously. There we go, that's better. This might have been just a bad connection over here. So it's pretty rock steady at about 6 watts. So I would say this radio has some promise. I'd say that this radio is could very easily, with a little bit of tweaking, be turned into a good talker. Next radio I have on the test bench is one that caught the gentleman's eye when he was here. It's the radio that he expressed an interest in, and at that time I hadn't decided whether or not I wanted to sell it, but I think I'm going to. I have actually two of these, and this is a Midland model 77-861 40 channel. This is an unusual Midland mobile radio. It's not that different than a regular small Midland 40 channel. It even has, in the back here, there's a 5-pin like DIN style plug that I remembered that some of these old Midlands had back in the day, and that would be to plug into the vehicle at 12 volt. But it also has a more common type of jack for 12 volt input right there, and that jack right there is for this little plug right here, because this has this special case that it's in that houses a battery pack. So what we've got is we've got this crazy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cell AAA battery pack. So the theory behind this is that you could run this off of battery power, completely portable. In fact, if we go back and look in the back, the other thing it's got is it's got this box right here, which is a termination box that screws into the standard PL259 female plug on the back that the coax would normally plug into. This is plugged into here and allows the use of this antenna. Yeah, so it's a center loaded antenna, which is pretty neat. Let's look at this battery pack again, because this is kind of interesting. So there's also a jack on the top here where it says battery charger. So the idea would be that you would put AAA nickel cadmium cells in here, and this would be a rechargeable battery pack. You would charge it up and then disconnect it from the charger and take it and go mobile. Get the strap, you just hang it on your shoulder and go out in the woods and talk. Anyways, notice there are two spacers right here. Fake little plastic things that basically take up, they just make continuity between here and here, because these batteries are going to be in series. So the current actually is going to flow through the batteries like this. And when you put batteries in series, the voltages add up. So the reason why there are two spacers in here is because if you use 8 AA cells, each cell is 1.5 volts. So you get 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3, plus 1.5 is 4.5, 6, 7.5, 9, 10.5, 12 volts. When you use NiCad battery cells, the rechargeable cells, those cells are 1.2 volts each. So the problem is they're 0.3 of a volt less than the other types of cells. To make up for that loss of 0.3 per cell, which is 0.3 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right, is what, 2.4 volts or so? We put in 2 more 1.2 volt NiCad cells, and what's 1.2 times 2? 2.4 volts. Voila. So 10 1.2 volt cells to get 12 volts, or if you're using regular alkaline batteries, you put these spacers in and you use 8 1.5 volt cells to get 12 volts. Pretty cool. Yeah, so for the purposes of tonight's testing, I don't want to use a whole bunch of batteries, so I'm just going to run this off my 12 volt regulated B&K supply, and I've just got my connections right to the battery pack. So I'm basically using the 12 volt regulated supply to simulate a battery pack. And it actually uses, this is an unusual microphone on this unit. because it actually acts also as the speaker. So the idea would be that if you've got this hanging on, you know, from the strap on your shoulder down around your side, it would be hard to hear a speaker in the unit here. But this you could have clipped up like, you know, near your lapel. Sort of the way that a lot of these portable police radios operate. Yeah, got some sensitivity there. Another interesting feature on this radio is, you notice there's no lights. There's actually a check light. So that lights the lamp so I can see what channel I'm on, and also the signal strength light. And the reason why they do that is so that you don't have this light on all the time running down your batteries. Squelch works. There's also a high-low switch. Again, this would be for power. This would be an unusual thing to have on a regular mobile radio or a base station, but on this, it's, if you're close enough and you can get by with low power transmission, then you're going to save on battery power. You're going to save on battery life. Seems to key up. I think what I could do is I could throw that Cobra 90 LTD back up here on the bench with no antenna, but just being such close proximity, I could probably still get this thing to send a signal over to it, maybe even get some feedback. Yep. So when I take this and I bring it over here and I get feedback, that tells me a few things. It tells me that the 90 LTD is in fact receiving on channel 19. I go to 18 and I go to 20 and it's a much weaker signal, so that's good news. So that confirms that this is receiving correctly. And the fact that I get the feedback tells me not only is the little Midland here transmitting on channel 19, but I also have modulation. The audio works. So the LTD, the only thing we don't know about that is whether or not it has any outgoing modulation, because I don't have a microphone for it. But this little Midland right here seems to work perfectly fine, which is great because I'm pretty sure he's going to want to buy this radio from me. The last one of these that sold on eBay, I think, brought 45 bucks. Next radio we're going to look at is probably the smallest of the radios that I have, other than I have some walkie-talkies or portable radios. This is a Cobra 19XS mobile. It's pretty dirty. I don't remember where I got this radio either. Nice little compact radio. Channel selector feels nice and crisp. Well, anyways, problem with this radio is I do not have the power plug for the back. So there's a molded plug that would plug into here and would give you the red and black wires for your 12 volt. A couple of jacks on the back where you get a PA and an external speaker. Again, the PA for the public address, and the external speaker would be just if you wanted to mount an external speaker. So anyways, I want to try and run this radio. I'm just gonna stick something in the back here to try and make a connection and put some jumper wires, my alligator clips on. But if you notice on the back, other than saying 13.8 volt DC, it does not tell me which one of these pins is plus and minus. So I've got a 50-50 chance of getting that wrong, and if I get the polarity wrong, I could damage the circuit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my my multimeter, and I have it set for continuity, and I'm just going to put one lead on the coax here, the outside of the coax, which is basically chassis ground, and I'm going to check and see if I have continuity. I have continuity to that side and not to this side, and what that tells me is that this pin is common to the chassis, which means that this is going to be my negative terminal. So the black wire would be normally coming out of here, and the red wire coming out of here. Well, this little Cobra is sick. All that happens when you power it up is I get a light here for the signal meter, and I get a little bit of a pop in the speaker. That initial pop. A little bit of scratchiness there in the volume control. So the audio output amplifier appears to be working, but no LED readout, no static or anything coming out of the speaker, no response. Key the microphone, the transmit light doesn't light. So this is one sick little radio. So I don't know, at some point maybe we'll take a look at this radio and see if we can't figure out what's wrong with it. Can't be a very valuable radio. It's such a little small little Cobra. That's funny, a quick check on eBay shows that, you know, this radio in working condition is only worth around 25 or 35 bucks. And then oddly enough though, some people have paid that for untested or parts only radios, so go figure. Next radio we have up on the bench is another early Cobra mobile. This is a 21 LTD Classic. I think the Classic was just a moniker they gave to this radio after it had been so popular over the years, the 21 LTD that is. So this has got the volume squelch, and then it's got the Dynamic, which is just, again, an outgoing volume control for the microphone. A little transmit light over here. We got a local and DX switch, so this is just a receive sensitivity switch. So if you've, say you're in traffic on the highway and you've got a trucker who's really close to you, you're talking to, you can keep it on low, and then DX would boost that receive for distant signals, and an ANL, automatic noise limiter. The plug for the microphone here, it's missing the restrain, top part of the strain relief there, so I'm pretty sure that that's probably gonna need some work. I'm not going to worry about that though. Screws have some rust on the back of them. It is an original Cobra mic though. So what's on here is that it's got the molded plug, different style, but it does have the plug present, and it terminates to one of these doohickeys for plugging into a cigarette lighter. So this radio was set up to be easily taken in and out of a vehicle. Alright, not getting anything out of this one. Let's see if this line fuse. Well, there's no fuse in there, so there you go. Alright. Well, tell you what we can do. Now normally you'd never want to bypass the fuse, but I am using my B&K regulated power supply, which has built-in overload protection. So basically the current on this thing's limited to 3 amps. If more than 3 amps tries to flow through this circuit, it's going to just trip the overload circuit and shut it down. So I'm not too concerned, because chances are if there's a bad short in this radio, it's gonna want to draw more than 3 amps real quick. Well, so far so good. And unlike the other radio, we've got some action here. We've got some static. Squelch is working. Oh yeah, that's sounding That's the sound of a sensitive front end. That's got something going on. Alright, I've got my coax hooked up here. Let's still got the dummy load on it. Let's key up and see what we get. Interesting. Well, unfortunately, I'm not getting any power output out of this thing. No wattage whatsoever coming out of here. Oh, you know what I should be looking at? I should be looking at this transmit light right here. Because if this transmit light doesn't light when I key it, well, it does. See, if the transmit light wasn't lighting when I would key it, then I would say it could still be a wiring problem with this, you know, kind of weak connection here. Could be that when I'm keying it, it's shutting off the receive, but it's not transmitting. But the fact that that is lighting tells me that no, it's probably, the wiring's still good enough to successfully transmit, but it's not budging my meter over there. And I'm on channel 19, and we're not getting a peep out of the 90 LTD. So this radio has 0 RF output. Could be bad finals, who knows.